Hi there, in this video I just want to have a chat to you about the kind of materials that I use when I'm out sketching, the kind of things that I use for doing these paintings that end up in my big sketchbook here that I use for cropping and collage. Because I think sometimes it's very easy to get kind of sucked into the idea that you have to have the best, most expensive materials in order to do the best work, and if you don't have the right kit, then it's just not going to get the results that you need. And I don't really think that's true. In fact, in a lot of ways, I think that can actually be a detriment to your work. Before I get going, I'd just like to remind you that my next online workshop is coming up soon. It's just a couple of weeks away. And if you'd like to learn how to do the kind of work that I'll be talking about today for yourself and really get into all the detail and all the structure behind it, then do check out the link that's here on the screen. Okay, let's get on. So when I'm painting outside, and when I'm painting in the studio as well, I think it's really important part of my work to limit the materials that I've got and not get too bound up in having the best kit the whole time. Because I think if that's what you're worrying about, then you're actually not thinking about what you can do with the materials that you have. You're always thinking about, if only I had this color, I'd like to have that particular paint, I need this specific tool for the job, rather than actually thinking, how can I creatively get towards closer to the marks and the colors that I want to get in my work with what I already have here in the studio. So what I want to do is just show you what I use most of the time. And obviously this is my kit. It's very personal. You don't have to use the same materials. You don't have to use the same colors. These are the things that I find work for me. So there are obviously going to be differences between different people, different artists obviously use different palette, they use different types of materials, they use different paints. But this is what works for me. And over the years I've found that limiting these materials down, and actually when I show people how much you can do with very limited materials, it can be quite a revelation. And actually the limitations can actually boost your creativity rather than limit your creativity. So just looking at what I've got in front of me here, this is basically all the materials that I use when I'm painting outside. And I don't tend to change it wherever I go. If I go to different places, I don't change it if I go to places at different times of the year. This is the materials that I use because they're easy to adjust. They're quite basic. They're almost like a set of primary colors in a way that I'm able to change and adjust to get close to the results that I want. But they're also, because it's so simple, because I'm so used to working with these materials and these colors, that I don't have to think about it. I say, right, I'm going to grab this palette, I'm going to grab these drawing materials, I'm going to grab these brushes, and I'm out the door. And that's all I had to do. I don't have to spend ages thinking about where I'm going or what I'm going to try and achieve when I get there. I just take the materials that I've got, the materials that I always use, and just go and get on with it. So when I'm painting outside, I tend to use water-based materials and dry materials for simplicity, really. It just works best for me. A lot of people like to work with oil paints outside, but I don't really want to do that anymore. I have done it in the past, but it's not really what I'm enjoying doing at the moment, and not for quite a number of years. Obviously, watercolor is a fantastic medium as well. It's very beautiful, but I like to build up layers when I'm working. I like to build up layers when I'm sketching as well, not just in the studio work. So having a paint that's got a little bit more body to it than watercolor, which is why I use the acrylics, I find that most conducive to the kind of work that I'm wanting to produce. So regarding the palette, I've got some black. It's a Mars black acrylic, titanium white. I've got a primary yellow at the moment. Sometimes I use a lemon yellow or a cadmium yellow, but this one is quite nice. It's a very straightforward, strong yellow that I can use for mixing blues and greens, and also for mixing into the black to get a green. Prussian blue, I like Prussian. It depends on the kind of blues that you enjoy. I find that it's reasonably cool. It's mixes with the blacks and the whites as well in order to produce good kind of sky tones or nice deep tones, rivery tones, because I work often, I go down the river or I'm at the coast working with those sorts of deep blues. I find that Prussian works best for me. Ultramarine, I use that sometimes, but I find it a bit warm. So I do prefer the Prussian, but you know, these things can change over time, but they're slightly variable. But basically, it's a strong yellow and a strong blue that I can use to mix. And I also have a couple of slightly warmer colours. I use a yellow ochre and I also use a burnt sienna. And those I use to balance out the cooler colours of like the blues and greens that I get in my work. And that's basically it for the paints. Just 4 colours and black and white. I just keep it really simple. And I find that no matter where I go and no matter what kind of landscape that I'm working with, I'm able to adjust these colours and mix them, usually directly on the paper, to get the kind of thing that's there in front of me, get close to what's there, close enough for what I'm trying to produce. So alongside the paints that I take with me, I just take this little tub that's got a few dry drawing materials in it, just a few watercolour pencils, just a knife for sharpening them. And I've got some oil pastels, which I rather like. These are really good for making marks with the acrylic as well. So a few oil pastels. The ones that are in here were in a set initially, but I've only just using the ones that are in here, so I don't need to take the whole set with me. These are the ones that I like to use, so those are the ones that come out with me. I don't want to take hundreds of different ones with me. If I'm not going to use them, it's just confusing and you're just carrying things that you don't really need. And I've also got a few soft pastels as well. These are reasonably cheap, kind of just soft, like chalky soft pastels. So just a few of those, and that's it for that. So some drawing materials and some paint. And for the marks that I like to make for applying the paint, I've just got a soft acrylic painting brush here. It's just a nylon bristles. It's not like a fancy one, as you can see. And this is just a stiff bristle brush. So this was actually, I think, probably a decorating brush at one point. And so it's just got really nice stiff bristles on it. And I like to use that for generally the whites, the lighter colours, because it means I'm able to retain the brush marks. If you can see just here, there's some nice big brush marks, and a stiff brush like that enables me to keep those nice strong brush marks in my work, and as it dries I can work over them. So that's it really. That is just all the materials that I take out with me, obviously apart from the paper to actually do the work on. But because they're so simple, because the materials are so basic, I never have to worry about it. I never have to think twice about it. All I do is just grab the materials that I know I'm going to use, and I get out there and get on with it. And I never find myself limited by the possibilities that I've got with those materials. I never find that I'm thinking, oh, I wish I had this with me, or I wish I had this colour, or I wish I had that paint, or I wish I had this tool with me. Because it's always the same. And I think that consistency helps me to produce the work and spend more time thinking about the work rather than worrying about the materials that I have. I'm just getting on with it. Because if you look at something like this, which is the most recent one that I've been working on, and then if you go back to the previous one, and these are all available to view on my channel. If you want to check out some of my previous videos, you can see me doing this. If you go back to the video that's just before this one on my channel, you'll see me doing the collage for this one, and actually there's one for me painting outside as well on this one. And the same goes for this one, where I was actually abroad. I was in Greece and I was standing on the coast, and I had exactly the same paints with me. And you know, it's not magic or anything, it's just that it's a very different way of pushing the same palette. I'm using, you know, these drawing materials. I've got these kind of pinks here with this pinky pastel. I'm using more of the Prussian blue. I'm using less of the greens and yellows because that's the kind of colours that were in front of me. So this painting and this painting were done with this very simple palette, but the same palette. So I'm not finding myself limited by those colours. What else have we got? Yeah, something like this, much cooler again. So there's a very wide range of possibilities within the same materials, just mixing them in different ways to obtain the results that I need that are in front of me. Obviously on this one I was using quite a lot of these blue pastels as well to do these drawing marks. I'm keeping a lot of the blue and white, which is actually a very kind of Greek emblem almost, isn't it? The blue and the white, it's very Greek. And that appealed to me a lot as well while I was there using the mixture of the blue and white. So there you go. As I was saying, it's very easy to think that you need to have this enormous range of colours, pastels, materials, drawing tools, whatever, all these kind of fancy different types of things, maybe reflective materials or special mediums or anything like that. There's none of that in here. And it's not magic, it's not particularly clever, it's just all it is using the simple palette that I've got and just pushing it in slightly different directions. So that was it. That's all I wanted to talk to you about today. As I was saying, my next online workshop is coming up very soon. So if you're interested in learning more about how to do this kind of work for yourself, please do check out the link that's here on the screen. Okay, I'll see you soon.